Okay, so firstly, Happy New Year.
Yeah, to you too.
Thank you. So I usually start the year with something pleasant. So flowers is a very favored topic with everybody. So start easy, go with something that is um, that's joyful. Plus, we during Jan also we have some very interesting flowers around. I remember there's this one. There are a lot of vines that also grow. So there's one Sankrant Vale that flowers during this time. But also it sets us up for good floral illustration through the year. We have something or the other blooming through the year. And if you want to, you could take this up as a lovely journal project where every month you could look for what are the seasonal flowers during that month and start making a little documentation about them. And this can just be within your area. So that's another way in which you start becoming more aware of your surroundings. Very often we just see something, see a beautiful tree full of flowers, but we never remember whether it was in May or March or June or December. So, starting a project like that, which can be perpetual through the year, is a good way to begin January. And then also, everyone is making resolutions. So, this is a nice one to pick up on. The other reason why flowers are good is the fact that they give you a versatile range of topics to practice. So, little bits and pieces of flowers are, or illustrating flowers are relevant in all other subjects that we come across. Say, for example, we want to do portraiture. So the texture of the skin is very close to texture of petals, for example. The wrinkles on fabric is very close to some of the textures in the petals again. Then you also have things like seeds or pollen, which give you another way of illustrating textural elements. And flowers are also very forgiving. So, in case one line shifts from here to the other, the flower really doesn't mind it. And the glory of the flower is not compromised because of just something as simple as that. But we know that if we try to do that with maybe portraiture, even whether it's animals or birds or whatever, that little line can be quite telling. So flowers gives us an opportunity to strengthen that line and strengthen our sketching and painting abilities. So I'm going to do two things today, but we're going to focus on the first part, which is the pencil sketching part. So we are going to draw one of these flowers, and we are going to focus on developing a light hand to layer a lot of graphite one on top of the other to create roundness and depth and also study contrast. So let me go over the flowers that I have shared with you today. Um, in everything that I try to look as a subject for class, I try to see some kind of category. So we have these two peonies. One is a light colored peony, one is a deeper colored peony. And over the past 4 5 years, they have suddenly become very prominent. You see them all over social media, you see them on Etsy, on Pinterest. They are like the cross between roses and tulips. And I think everything has a season, everything has comes into fashion and goes. Roses have come and gone, tulips have come and gone. So now it seems to be, and a few years ago, hydrangeas were all the craze, and now it's the age of the peonies. So it's nice to draw these because they will help you learn both aspects. Flowers like peonies are like cups, or even like lotuses. So they have like a semicircular shape, and the petals come out from the open end. So all of them are pretty much the same cup size, shape. So you will see some petals that show their backs and some petals in the background that show their fronts. This can be very confusing when you're drawing in the beginning, but once when you learn the subject well, you find it's just about following the shape and putting that shape in the right position. Then you have flowers like the hibiscus, which is like a cup, but it also opens up and spreads out its petals very elegantly. Here we have a lily. This is the stargazer lily also. And all lilies, many lilies, are also like a cup that is opened up quite a bit. And you can see that most buds are like long cups, and then they open up into these petals. Lilies also had their time about 10-15 years ago. Everywhere you could see these lilies. And they are very dramatic. They have stripes, they have dots, then they have multiple colors, and they have this beautiful variegation in like the edges are light, the center is dark. So they can be very dramatic flowers to paint. Hibiscus, it's a very traditional flower and is often seen in all sorts of festivals, especially when a Ganpati festival will come around. You make a hibiscus and everything is, you're forgiven everything. And then you have these. The pansy is a very unusual flower. It is asymmetrical. It comes in a variety of color combinations. And this helps us practice our color blending and also wet on dry, wet on wet applications. So we will do color at some point, and I'm not going to push it today because I would like you to focus on drawing with pencil first. So let's start with the lotus. We are going to learn how to draw this lotus and also to shade it and give it this kind of texture. So this exercise is going to be about precision. So I want you to um, be patient a little bit while I explain to you how we can break this down and make our illustration easy enough. As usual, I will work with just angles and circles. So first of all, let us draw a line to establish the angle of the flower, which means I will draw a line that indicates the base, which would be the base where the center of the flower would sit. And then from here, almost 90 degrees up, this would give us a basic proportion of the flower. 1 second, this has gone too far. So I'm going to make it a little lower. So I'm aligning this to the ends of the flower. So as far as possible, I try to work with perpendicular lines, squares, triangles, and equidistant shapes, symmetrical shapes. Once this is given to you, it's very easy to figure out certain proportions. Like, for example, the petals on the side, if this is the center, and if this is the end of the flower on top, the petals are just so much longer than an equidistant triangle. Then from here, we have lines at various angles. Now, this shape, I'm going to draw the tip over here, but you can see that the shape is round in one manner from the top and rounded from another side at the bottom. The moment you get a straight line, it gives you at least some indication of how you can draw the shape around that line. Not all petals are originating from this point alone. There will be petals which will originate maybe from here, but it's not visible to us. So if I draw a line like this, at least you get some idea of where all these, the ends or the edges of the petal are going towards. Now, this is just one way that I would use to draw guidelines. And this is by far not the only method, and this is by far not the most standard method also. But in the absence of anything specific, at least we have some starting point. So I'm going to share the screenshot with you. And then I'm going to start drawing it, and I'll give you an idea of how you can begin as well. Right. So the whole purpose of doing all that math and geometry is to be able to have some starting point on a blank piece of paper. More than anything, facing a blank paper seems to be a very daunting experience for most people. And I have seen that very often when a complete beginner would start making something like this and then get completely lost because you're making an outline of, because that's the only way you can think of starting, make an outline and then make the details. But we are going to go about it a different way. After you've made the guidelines, you will first draw a few parts of the guideline. The guideline is merely that it's not the exact shape of the object that we have to draw. So you can start with a point, and based on um, a vertical and horizontal. In this case, the vertical and horizontal could be gauged by the ends of our paper. So based on the vertical, I feel that this line is at about maybe this angle. Now, whether this is 20 degrees or 30 degrees or 40 degrees doesn't really matter. So I want you to be able to visualize this. And now, with only one dot and one line, we have no proportion. So now draw a line that is perpendicular and just draw the end of the line. This line has to be slightly shorter than your main half of the main line. So I've drawn that dot over here. You'll just about see this. When you're drawing it, you will draw it lighter. I'm drawing it slightly deeper so you can see it. We're going to try to not use the eraser too much. Now, once this is drawn, from here, you can go to, you can start making some of the lines of the petals. If you want, you can make all the guidelines also. And look at the relative heights and angles of these lines. So we are looking at distance. So we have this line. Look at the length of the line, angle. And as we go forward, I'll give you some more tips to evaluate. Then we have this center point. Then we have one long petal here, one short petal here, one over here that extends beyond this point a little bit, almost going towards 3 o'clock. Then you have a petal coming to 4 o'clock, which is just a little left inside this petal. And then there's another one coming towards 5 o'clock. So this is a good objective way of drawing your guidelines. Once this is drawn, you flip between the picture that shows you the guidelines and the picture that reveals the actual flower, and then start drawing these shapes of the flower. This is going to be a loose sketch. So here you also have an overlap. You'll need to know which petal you're drawing. So this line and this petal overlap. And like I said, take your time in figuring this out. This petal almost curls inward, very unusual for a lotus. And every line emerges from a previous line, every subsequent line. And we also have a curve here that will be the flat head of the center of the lotus. If you have any difficulties or doubts, please feel free to stop me and ask me a question, because I'm just assuming that you might have certain problems when you really don't, and you'll just say, why is she spending so much time on describing this? I already know how to make it. Now, the petal shapes you see over here are somewhat like this. You will have one petal shaped like this, and then you have a fold which is on the inside. So look at the edges, and the shading on these also will be slightly different. So you need to make those two parts, not just the outside shape, but also the inside of that petal, wherever relevant. Now, when you're drawing these shapes, avoid drawing them like this, because you might then be tempted to draw very short lines and you'll just draw something like this. Do not do that. Hold your pencil far away and just draw with your fingers. So make a line like this. If you can't draw a curve, just make a straight line and then another straight line and then like this. In order to be comfortable with pencil sketching, no, not that. In order to be comfortable with any kind of drawing, you need to be comfortable with pencil sketching. This is the most underrated tool, I think. Not enough people are spending time honing their skills on pencil. If I had it my way, I would just make this a compulsory tool. You can't touch anything or buy anything till you've done 100 hours of pencil sketching. You should be able to, a stationery shop should be able to ask you for that before you buy anything. So you can see how my lines are not really very sure. So I'm making multiple lines in the same place. So these multiple lines help me to shape it. It's almost like when you see a potter on a wheel, they will put that whole clump of clay, and then little by little they'll start adjusting and then start making a particular shape. So that's exactly what we do, whether it is pottery or sculpture or art. Every little line is an adjustment. That's why I try to get everyone to avoid erasing. Each line will indicate something regarding the whole picture. And with a minor adjustment one way or another, your picture will start becoming more and more believable. So what are the things that you need to watch out for over here? One is the relative lengths and angles of each petal line that you make. Then you also have the shape of the line. So you might be tempted to make a shape in your head that looks like this, make it a point, because this is something that we are plagued with. All Indians love to make flowers which have pointed edges, but we do not have any pointed end on the petal at all. At best, it just comes to a very narrow tip, but it doesn't get pinched ahead. So check if that is happening. And then also check if the origin of those lines is in the same place. Sometimes, if you draw a petal like this, and then you draw a petal somewhere like that, it may be hidden, but this will throw the rest of the petals off because it almost seems as if the, the odd shaped petal, instead of joining somewhere here, has just fallen into the lap of the larger petal. And the only correction over here that might be required is changing the angle of that petal and maybe adding one more. So this, you can visualize this going down to the center, even if it's not the same point, but to a similar base that will uh, give you the correct illusion. Okay, once you're satisfied with your drawing, we go to shading. And for shading, we can use the original illustration. And now your only task is to shade each and every petal according to that reference. Now at this point, we will get rid of some of these lines and markers because they're interfering with the petal and they may lead to unnecessary confusion. There's far too many lines over here which will impede the texture of this petal. If you feel unsure about your petal shapes, you can erase one or clean out one petal at a time. Okay, another thing. Now at this point, since we are working with pencil, please keep a rough paper handy and keep your hand on that because as we start adding shading, your hand will smudge over the work you've done. And I don't know if I've shown you this, but you can also take an old sock, cut off the foot part and make a very small, like a tiny 1 centimeter, half-centimeter incision on one side and use that as a glove to protect the edge of your fingers and the edge of your hand. And this won't smudge because the smudging doesn't happen because of friction. It happens because of the oils in our finger. All right. Now we go back to our shading class. This is from the art quarter. We have to look at each independent petal now and identify its own distinct features. So while we might have drawn a particular shape, these shapes can now be refined. Not just shapes, even the size can be refined. And each petal will now have its own importance. So your your exploration goes from first to the last petal. Based on the first petal, everything else will have to adjust itself. Now here we have a very subtle shade. So you can choose two pencils. If you have a regular 2B pencil, that's good. Or you could also use a mechanical pencil. This also has a 2B lead. Even an HB lead will do for today's class. So start off with the point where you have a darker shadow or a shade that's over here. And start shading from there. Because in case your pencil is going to be pretty sharp at the beginning. But without rotating the pencil, you will start adding some lead to the paper. And you have to make very slow, smooth movements, depositing a little bit of lead as you go along. We're going to have a two-pronged approach for today's study. First is to study the various tones you see. So in this particular flower, we see that the tones are very, very light. And there is a certain texture. So you follow the lines of the texture. And keep looking at the petal every time you draw this, because though it might seem as if all the lines are heading towards the center or the tip, they're not so. The tip is dark on its own. In some places we have dark pink color. And then some of the lines are only seen in the mid section of the petal. And each line has its own direction. So some of them are closer towards the bottom and then they curve towards the tip, but they don't reach all the way to the tip. One good thing about pencil is its layering ability. Even after you've drawn these textures, you can go over and recreate maybe the depth of color along the edge, connecting it to the texture lines. And make the picture more like the reference image. So this edge is almost invisible, except for a very light shading along the edge. Now, as is the case with every study or experiment, uh, we are not looking at the perfect picture of this flower. No. I would like you to see what are the different things that you've been able to achieve in this. So look at your shading ability. In shading, we want tonality. So the number of different shades you can manage, light of hand, lightness of hand, layering, smoothing. So without using a finger to blend, how smooth you can show your illustration. So even if you get the wrong shape or the shape is slightly incorrect, I wouldn't worry too much about it, because our focus today is slightly different. All the lines are very subtle in this flower. So We want to keep our sketching very, very light. So when I'm using the eraser, I am using it to make the line lighter, not so much for correction. So the flexible eraser, I can just roll on paper and reduce the lead. The more you keep looking at the subject, the more precisely you will be able to see each line. Now, there's one shading in which you do very quick line work. So let me just show that to you, which is what we don't want. Okay, let me show it over here. So if we have the same petal over here, when we are just blocking color, this is what we will do. Or something like that. This is done mostly for a brief color study that you want to make. And eventually you will make a painting or something. So you just want to block a certain area and you want to know how the light and shadows and textures will work. But this is not what we're doing here. Here we are illustrating with pencil. So here, please take your time and focus on putting down a certain amount of graphite very gradually to create that the depth that is required. And then when you want to layer, change the angle so that the graphite stays better. So this movement requires a lot of practice. And um, if you don't practice this enough, you'll always get a very uneven shading. For most people, they would resort to then using a blending stump to blend this line and then proceed. But that gives a very artificial shade or shadow. So I try to avoid it as much as possible. It's like training wheels. At some point, you have to be able to shed your training wheels. So, one practice is to deliberately go into these patches where you've not been able to deposit that graphite and fill up in that space. And always remember to hold your pencil in that one orientation always. So here's how I do it. If these little hexagon or triangle shaped pencils help you to just hold one grip and not roll the pencil around. You don't really have to remember which one you held as long as you don't change the grip at all. Then when you're drawing the texture, start first with a light line and then just keep going over that to increase its depth. And please look at the line in the reference image. These lines are now all coming from a higher point towards the bottom, almost like a seashell. At any point, if you're unsure of something, don't make that line. So it's like, I often say this, if you don't know for certain, you might as well assume the best. So if you don't give the wrong information, the brain will automatically assume something better. And by this, I mean the brain of anyone who is going to see this image. So the brain has this amazing ability to fill out information that it does not receive. Sometimes that is called jumping to conclusions, and sometimes it's just called filling in the blanks. So, with images and pictures, the filling in of the blanks works very well in our favor. It uses up all the information that it has from the past about that particular object and will fill it in. So, unless there are lots of gaps, it generally is capable of discerning what would be the right information. And we know this from literally, I'm sure you must have seen these illusions. If I were to draw uh, like a triangle this way, I'm just drawing three angles and you will be able to see a triangle within that, right? So these are all, optical illusion is nothing but the brain trying to fill in information. So in this case also, if you don't draw something it will start filling out information. So if you, unless now you leave this whole thing blank, the information that the brain gets is that this probably is a hole in this information,
Reading
especially after you've
between the
done all.
lines.
Sorry?
So it's like reading between the lines.
Correct, yeah. So how is it going so far? Do you have any questions or comments?
Not, I don't know. It doesn't seem to look like a lotus very much. Can you
Okay, let me have a look.
Am I doing it correct?
Okay, could you share a picture on the group? Then I can
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll
share
do
it
that.
and I can now comment on it.
It's looking like some other flower, not like a lotus.
Huh, so as long as it looks like a flower, we are halfway there.
It's looking like a stone sapphire.
Ah, okay. So you're mostly there. I'll tell you what is happening. In some places, this is missing. The origin of the petal point is missing. So it's all just out there. So is mine actually. You can't tell what is overlapping what. And the overlaps are not very clear in the case of your flower. So if we were to just change a few things, I'll share the image and I can speak better about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so in this case, we need to have this shape in the middle.
Hmm. Yeah.
Need to have a very defined line, either drawing the line itself or with a shadow on the petal that is underlapped. So now I am claiming this word because there is no other word than underlapping because I can't say is overlapped by. It just doesn't work. So here your shapes are there. And in this case now, one petal has come over, one petal from the back has come over the petal from the front. So in a way, you're playing over here with dimension. This petal starts in the front, but somehow ends up behind the petal that
Hmm.
starts in the back. So if you convert that, then this petal will look like it is in the foreground, and then automatically this goes into the background. So where you have to make overlaps is very crucial. So if you can review your flower one more time and just make those lines clear, you might get something, some change in that. But I'm glad you have a picture at this stage because after you make those lines, we'll make a picture at the next stage. Majbeen, how is your picture looking?
I've sent you in the group.
Oh, okay. Okay, very nice. I think that's going very well. In some places, some lines are looking a little odd. Let me check.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is how the flower is, I suppose. Okay, so the lines over here are not very distinct. This side.
Okay, that petal. Fine.
Yeah. And this petal, oddly enough, you can't tell that it goes inside or is next to the petal on the left. Because the line over there is a little obscure. but I'm going to keep it inside the adjacent petal. So here I'm going to shade the tip exclusively, not the inside right now. And with each line, I'm going to see how I can recreate that dimension. And now I can see that I made a goofed up over here. This petal does not come at this point. It actually joins over here. So I need to make adjustments. And there aren't any lines visible on this side at all, at least to me. So I'm just going to make some shading along the tip as I see it and finish it then. So there isn't any conflict between the lines over here and over there. Then the lines over here also are somewhat like this. And also many of these lines just come till about this junction. They don't seem to go beyond. And all these you can make with just these finger movement. Okay, now I want you to try one thing. Choose any other flower from our selection that I've given you. And I'm going to give you about, 10 minutes. I want you to try and use this format of making a geometric shape on your own and see if you can draw the right proportion, shape, direction of line of petals, and start shading like this. So if you want, you could use the pansies because they're just 5 petals. They're very defined shapes and can be easily drawn. So I want you to try that first. I'm going to keep my screen. I'm in fact going to walk away from my desk because otherwise I'll start chatting and micromanaging. And then I'm going to come back in 10 minutes and we can have a discussion.
Okay.
Okay. All right. How is it going? Any questions? We still have 5 more minutes. Okay, Majavina sent a photo. Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, very nice. Okay, so Majvin, try to rotate your book a little bit and try shading in different directions. So
Okay.
I'm gonna still leave you 5 minutes. Continue this, it's on the right track. You might be able to get some deeper tones by changing the angle of the pencil.
Okay.
Okay, shall I make a picture? I'm taking that same pink pansy that Najbeen has taken. Let me just demonstrate how
Sure.
I create the internal geometry for this one. The shapes that we look for are circles, squares, and triangles. So in this case, I could also start off, my starting point could in fact be a circle. Then that way I can get a center point also like that. Oh, sorry. So this helps me divide it more in a more regular manner. And then I can get this triangle shape here. It's almost at perpendiculars to the vertical and horizontal and at 45 degrees to the vertical center of the flower. Then from there, I can get a line here, which if I tilt my head is at 1 o'clock position on the circle, assuming this is 12 o'clock and this is 6 o'clock, or just objectively, it would be at a 2 o'clock position. So it helps me get more data like this. Then the break in the petal over here is at this point, and then the center of the bottom petal shifts a little over here. How far this petal goes from the outside is another consideration we should have. So I would draw a line from there, and that line could be maybe twice as much from the center. That's how I get the distance of the petal outside, and the tallest point would be somewhere here, right? So I'll share this with you. Now, since this is something that I've devised automatically, this will come easier for me. But I would encourage you to do the same. Figure out your own way of making those shapes. Okay, so I'm going with the shape that I've made. We start off with a circle across all the blue, red, and yellow marks. Make that V shape in the center. There is some kind of proportion there also. And the circle, again, is just a guideline, so I don't have to touch the circle everywhere. Right, now that this has been drawn, I can go to the main flower. And then petal by petal, I can change the shapes, make these adjustments. Now you'll notice even when we go to portraits later in the year, this is pretty much exactly how we will start breaking that down. Now, because faces are fairly regular, there are certain very definite proportions that we can work with. But even something as organic as this can work. So this is what I was telling you, Majbeen. When you're shading over here, I can see lines in the pencil work. Those lines come because sometimes the texture of the paper doesn't allow for our uh, lead to work very smoothly on the surface. In that case, you can maintain the angle of your pencil the same. Don't change the angle. And then you will see that you can start making a smoother texture. Just make sure that your hand is firmly planted on the surface, whichever surface, on the book or the table, so that your fingers can float. You have to touch the pencil with almost a feather-like touch. Now I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to show you a way in which you can study whether your images are going in the right direction or not. Okay, look at this picture now. I've just shared it. This is actually how our tone looks. Look at how gray even the yellow color is. And now if you look at your image, just see how close you have come to the variety of grays that you see over here. Okay, now another thing is when you have dark patches in this flower, we have these dark patches towards the bottom here. When you're making them, I'm going to suggest don't make them from the end where you see them. Start making the dark patch somewhere in the middle. That way you don't overshoot. And once you're comfortable with this, then you can start increasing the intensity of your shading and take the line even further gradually. This way you can control the shape. And keep the shading nuance. So, Majbeen, in your case, I could see that you tried to make it dark, but you seem to be a little afraid of making it too dark.
Yeah, I'm making it again.
Okay. So do this back and forth shading. That's good practice to make sure that your edges are not uh, they don't end in one solid line or edge, because it's not the case over here. And then you can expand that in all directions. Some places you can make the line slightly lighter and softer. In other places you can make it deeper. Now, in fact, we can use this black and white image to match our tones. Suddenly the paper looks so white now. Just the places where we kept paper thinking that that yellow is going to be a very bright shade. It's not as bright. It's just relatively bright. And now in if you want to make this look even brighter, then you can shade the outside edges. A nice dark outline, and then they'll shade the outside, almost in the same, you could use the same kind of tonal variation. Going to make a square here. So there's a lot of elements that are out of focus just behind. So after you finish making the flower, if you shade the background, imitating the dark and light that you see there, automatically your flower is going to become really bright and pop out. Now, this also is a very interesting exercise where you just copy the tone, recreate just the tonal variation, regardless of what that object may be. There. So this can expand into a very nice little square with the flower on the top, well highlight, and nice background also for it. Okay. I'm going to share this picture with you. I won't be able to finish it, unfortunately. But hopefully you can use the rest of the images to practice some more florals. Ah, okay. Okay, this is looking slightly better, no? What do you think? But your pencil, I think, can go even darker. The subtle shades are looking nice, Najmi. The darker shades can go even darker. And again, you're hesitating from making the overlaps. No, this now in this case, it's you. Earlier, Ashmita's picture showed that.
I think I chose the other flower.
Yeah,
So I find the working with the black and white is easier when I'm distracted by the color. There is the yellow and the purple is like
yeah,
the
that happens. Yeah, so if you want, you can do that. You can choose any of these flowers or actually any flowers that you want, convert them to black and white, and then try to shade them. Just avoid making pencil sketches of pencil sketches. Try to break down uh, the tone yourself.
how does that look like that?
Yeah, let me check. Yeah. So you're getting texture fine. I suspect that you are holding your pencil a little uh,
Close.
too close
Let
and
me
also with a lot of tension. So that is very normal. Don't worry about that. It's we have to move away from that tension. This is the grip that we normally have for writing. So can't help that. So the moment you move the pencil grip further away, the less pressure you can put. So you can move it more subtly. And these are just, I think these are just muscles that have never been used in this manner. So the more you do it, the better you will get. And honestly, within like a week or so of just shading very small areas in very small movement with very little pressure, you start developing that subtle strength. You should be able to do a much easier job of going back and forth in line with pencil within about a week or so. But that provided that you do it every day. Okay, so next week we won't have class because I have the retreat. We'll have our class the week after that, and at some point I'll try to um, do an additional class. Although in this month we have 5 Wednesdays, so we don't really need to have an extra class, but you never know. So the week after next, when we'll take up florals again, that time we're going to do watercolor. So I'm going to teach you a little bit of color blending, how to use wet on wet, and how to do layering and glazing. Okay. So till then, you have 2 weeks to practice just pencil sketching. That's a lot.
Can you just share what we did last week?
Sorry?
Did you share what you taught last week?
Last week we didn't have class, no?
Picasso. We did Picasso.
That was, yeah, correct.
Picasso.
We did Picasso.
Yeah.
I think I have shared it.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
you've
I'll
shared
look
it.
into that.
Is there on
Yeah.
the screen? Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
All
next
right.
week
So
we
I
have
shall see
wedding in
you
the
in 2
house.
weeks.
So gradually.
Sorry, somebody is
Yep.
bursting crackers here. I can't hear.
Yes, hopefully.
No, I can't hear.
Okay.
Could you
Thank
mention?
you.
Thank you, I think.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'll see
Bye.
you in 2 weeks. Bye bye.
Bye.